everybody, and welcome to another episode of Cinema Heroes. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
And today we are talking about Doctor Strange, released in 2016, directed by Scott Derrickson, written by John Spates and Scott Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill, and starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Rachel McAdams, Benedict Wong, Mads Mikkelsen, and Tilda Swinton. Before I get your first impression of the movie, Stu, because I'm sure you saw this in the theater, correct?
Yes.
I will say, the very first time I went to Comic-Con was in 2016. So this was July of 2016. And, camped out so I could get into Hall H. And Marvel had their presentation and they showed a clip of Doctor Strange. And I hated it. I was like, wow, this is really bad. And it was it's just taken out of context. It was a scene between Doctor Strange and the Ancient One when he kind of first meets the Ancient One.
Yeah.
And I just didn't like Benedict Cumberbatch's accent. It was like something about his American accent was just really throwing me off. I didn't really care for the dialogue in the scene. I was just like, this is going to be a bad movie. And then the movie came out and I went and saw it and my opinion completely changed. I was like, this is actually one of the better Marvel movies. I was like, this is really good. So I don't know what it was about that scene that just like really, just seeing it out of context just really threw me off. But I just was like, ugh, when I saw that. And now I have no problem with it. The scene in the movie, when I see it, I'm like, it's fine. So I don't know what I don't know. Don't know why I felt that way the first time around, but yeah. What did you think of it when you saw it the first time?
I loved it. I've always really liked this movie. But lately I feel like I have to defend it, which is strange. No pun intended. But there are a lot of people that believe this movie is mid. I'm like, I don't know. I think this is one of the best, like you said, one of the better movies in the MCU. It definitely sticks to that formula, that MCU formula, which is basically like beat for beat the Blake Snyder
Save the cat
story structure.
right.
Yeah, save the cat story structure. But I don't know. I think what the best thing about it is Scott Derrickson's direction. When I saw it when it came out opening weekend with my wife, then she was my fiance. We hadn't gotten married yet, but we both looked at each other like, yo, that was really good. We weren't expecting it to be as good as it was. We weren't really expecting it to be I don't know, like, I don't want to say it was a drama because it definitely has some comedic parts in it, but for the most part it was a pretty like toned down, grounded movie when it wasn't dealing with the mysticism.
Right.
But I really like that approach. I love the way Scott Derrickson directed it. I love how he used some steady cam in some of the scenes, and not steady cam but handheld, and really I love how they kind of explained that the mysticism is essentially a form of magic that encompasses the whole picture. She was the Ancient One was trying to get Stephen Strange to realize that that science is a bunch of people seeing the picture in part but not as a whole. And they kind of see it as a whole and approach it from a spiritual aspect, and I found it very interesting. Um, I love Stephen Strange's arc. Um, it's not perfect. There are definitely some flaws with the movie. We'll get into that, but overall, I thought it was a very well done movie that definitely kept me interested from start to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, for some reason, and maybe it's just amongst some, I don't know if it's just amongst our circle of people, or if it's a kind of a more like larger opinion, but yeah, a lot of people seem to think this is kind of mid Marvel. It's kind of just the middle of the road, it's all right kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
But especially rewatching it, I hadn't seen this movie in a couple of years, and I had forgotten how good it is. And so yeah, this movie and Ant-Man, I feel like I sometimes have to defend as being kind of the better, upper Marvel movies in my opinion.
Uh-huh.
And I think this one is really well done, and it is probably mostly because I think Benedict Cumberbatch is an amazing choice for Doctor Strange.
Agree.
And I thought that when he got cast, and then I got nervous when I saw the clip at Comic-Con, and I was like, oh no. But I think he's actually perfect as Stephen Strange, and I think Scott Derrickson does a fantastic job with the material. And I think I'd only seen one other Scott Derrickson movie before seeing this movie, and it was Sinister. And right before we started recording, you and I were talking about how good Sinister is.
Uh-huh.
So I remember we were also disappointed when he left Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness,
Yes, I was
because
very disappointed.
yeah, and I would like, to visit an alternate universe one day and see the Scott Derrickson version of that movie, because I think you may have even called it horror light. It was like Marvel's kind of horror, but it's horror light because we got to go for
Yeah.
that PG-13 and everything.
Yeah.
And I think maybe Scott Derrickson would have had to do a horror light as well because it's Marvel, but it still would have been interesting to see what he had done with that material and everything.
I think Scott Derrickson's movie would have been scarier,
Yeah.
but not to the point where you wouldn't be able to take your kid to it. You may not be able to take your 7-year-old kid, but you could still take your 12-year-old kid to
Right.
go see it. That's what I think that he was probably going for.
And these movies are PG-13, so even
Yeah.
even this movie technically may be, for some people, they couldn't take their 7-year-old to it. You know what I mean? But it's like,
Yeah.
but I do feel like Marvel tends to try to be a little bit on the lighter side of a PG-13 rating than on the
Agreed.
the other side.
Agreed. Their PG-13 is closer to PG than it is to R.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And so I think it's possible that with Scott Derrickson in the driver's seat, Multiverse of Madness might have been a little closer to R than PG, which would have been interesting. I mean, and even Sam Raimi's is probably a little bit more towards R than PG, just because of zombie
Raimi's,
strange and stuff.
Multiverse of Madness. I get Temple of Doom vibes from Multiverse of Madness, because Temple of Doom is a weird movie,
right?
But I like Temple of Doom.
Sure.
Though. I like Temple of Doom more than Multiverse of Madness. But yeah, I would have loved to have seen Scott Derrickson's Multiverse of Madness. He was gonna have Nightmare as the villain, and it definitely would have been closer to a true horror movie than Multiverse of Madness. But again, Scott Derrickson, his direction may be the best thing about the movie.
Mm-hmm. How much did you know about Doctor Strange before you saw this movie?
Not much. Very surface level. I knew his origin. I knew his backstory. I knew that he was not a very nice guy. I knew he was a doctor, and went to the Ancient One to become a sorcerer. I knew of the Ancient One. I knew of Mordo.
You knew more than me.
As far as his villains and like his adventures outside of his origin story, I was very green. But I pretty much knew his backstory.
Well, that's cool. I didn't know. I may have known he was a doctor who got injured and then became the Sorcerer Supreme, but that I was gonna say most of my Doctor Strange knowledge probably came from like the few comics I had where he showed up and he was already the Sorcerer Supreme, and did some magic, and so I got the impression that he was very wise / knowledgeable, very powerful. He could, he was the Sorcerer Supreme. I think I knew that, but I didn't know who Mordo was. I didn't know the Ancient One. So I knew, like you said, kind of very surface level, but about him before seeing this movie. Speaking of the Ancient One, there was some controversy when Tilda Swinton was cast as the Ancient One. How did you feel about that?
It didn't really bother me. I understand why they did it, because when the Ancient One was created, I don't know when was it the 70s when
something like that, probably.
So
60s or 70s.
60s or 70s. The world was different, and there are a lot of stereotypical portrayals of people of color.
Right.
And Scott Derrickson specifically chose a white woman in order to avoid those stereotypes. And unfortunately, it backfired.
Right.
So his heart was in the right place, but it didn't play out the way he thought it would play out. That being said, this version of the Ancient One is one of the best supporting characters in the MCU. I love her in this movie.
Yeah.
Tilda Swinton completely understands the essence of the character without making it a caricature of a sage-like figure.
Yep, I totally agree. And I think that's part of the reason why he probably wanted to cast Tilda Swinton, because he knew that she was an actress that had that could do that could portray the character without being kind of a caricature, and play it seriously and still have that presence, and also like you said, just not feeling kind of cartoony. And I think she does an amazing job, and like you said, she's one of the best supporting characters in a Marvel movie. She's amazing, and I'm glad we got to see her again in Endgame briefly.
Yeah, me too.
So yeah, I understood the complaints. I like you said, I think Scott Derrickson had his heart in the right place. It's just when you hear the Ancient One is going to be played by a white woman, you just immediately are like, or fans are immediately like, wait, what?
What?
Yeah, and so then they get upset, and it's the whole problem with the internet. Really, it's we get bits and pieces of casting information and story out of context, probably, and and the internet just explodes or breaks or whatever with rage at times, and it's just it's unfortunate. I wish
I get it too. Like, it by casting a white woman, you took away the opportunity for that representation on screen. But again, he wanted to avoid those racist stereotypes, and it's unfortunate that people, it resulted in people's reaction, people's reacting negatively to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I think that Tilda Swinton was perfect for the role, but or perfect for the role in this particular movie,
right?
Yeah, how it was written. But it's it's unfortunate that we live in the time that we live in, and racial tension is still kind of high. It's different than it used to be, but it's still kind of high, especially in mainstream media. And I just wish more people were a bit understanding of certain creative choices, but their concern is warranted.
For sure.
It's definitely warranted.
Yeah, and I agree. And you're right. I think I agree with everything you said. I think Tilda Swinton is perfect for the role that was written. However, the argument could be made that, like you said, it took away the opportunity for representation for an Asian actor to play the character and to do it, just as well as Tilda Swinton maybe did. So there's that. But Tilda Swinton is what we got, and I think she does a good job in the movie. And and I don't know much about the Ancient One from the comics. I do remember reading, though, that once you said it, that did trigger a memory that I do remember. The Ancient One was not necessarily portrayed great in the earlier comics, and I'm curious. So the whole thing with pulling energy from the dark dimension, was that? You may not know this, but was that something that was created for this film, or was that something that was true to the Ancient One's character?
I have no idea.
Yeah, I wasn't sure either. Because that's another thing that could have really upset people too. If it's kind of like the Mandarin in Iron Man 3 when it was revealed that Ben Kingsley was not the Mandarin, which was also casting a white actor to play an Asian, traditionally an Asian character.
Ben Kingsley, he does have some Middle Eastern descent,
right?
Because his real name is like an Indian name or something. Because Ben Kingsley is not his real
name, right?
I forget what it was, but I know when he got cast as Gandhi, people made a fuss about it.
Really?
I remember reading about it because I was too young to remember. But
well, you weren't even born yet. I wasn't even born yet when Gandhi came out. 1982.
82? I hadn't realized it was that old. Wow.
Yep. It beat E.T. at the Oscars. It won Best Picture in early 1983. And Richard Attenborough, who directed Gandhi, later said that E.T. should have won. Which I think is kind of funny. I've never seen Gandhi. It's just I own it.
Neither have I.
But it's too long. It's 3 hours and 15 minutes or something. So I've never sat down to watch it. But I always thought that was kind of funny that Richard Attenborough was happy that he won, I'm sure, but at the same time was E.T. was just so good.
I mean, E.T. was great, and it's. I love when actors, or not actors, but filmmakers, they respect the craft enough to know when something else should have won, or they recognize,
just give the props. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, give the props, give the credit where it's due, even though it doesn't get quite as much recognition. Kind of like with Steven Spielberg, what he's recently said about The Dark Knight. He was like, The Dark Knight should have been nominated for Best Picture, and I mean, we've been saying that for
since 2008. Yeah, pretty much. Or since the Oscar nominations came out in 2009. Yeah. And I think it's just also a sign of humility too, to because you could easily be like, no, my movie's the best movie, like it's a masterpiece. Right. And so, but anyway, my whole point was, people were upset with the Mandarin when you find out in Iron Man 3 that Ben Kingsley is not actually the Mandarin. He's just an actor who was hired by Guy Pearce to pretend to be the Mandarin. And a lot of Mandarin fans thought it was, kind of taking a dump on the character that they liked. And so I wondered if the Ancient One pulling energy from the dark dimension and kind of being somewhat hypocritical, Caecilius calls her a hypocrite at the very beginning of the movie, because I think he realizes when she starts, I thought they were in the mirror dimension, but I think they're in the real world when she's kind of manipulating the buildings and stuff around them. And he calls her a hypocrite. And I think it's because he knows that she's pulling energy from the dark dimension. And so I wondered if that was something that could have potentially upset fans of the Ancient One to think that, you know, this character has a dark side or has a dark secret. And so it was just a question, I guess, a rhetorical question, but
I don't remember anyone complaining about it.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. But not to get too off subject, but going back to what you said about Ben Kingsley and Iron Man 3, the twist wasn't the problem. It was the way it was executed. They played the fact that they played it as a joke was the problem, because Batman Begins does the same thing and it works.
Yeah, that's true. With Liam Neeson being Ra's al Ghul rather than Ken Watanabe, right?
It's the same type of twist, but it's played straight and you believe it. But because they played it as a joke, it feels like they did take a dump on the character.
Right, sure.
But
that makes sense to me. That makes sense to me.
Yeah. I don't think that I don't think that people really complained about that. I know I didn't. I thought it was a pretty good reveal.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it could have been fleshed out a little bit more as to why she was drawing from the dark dimension.
Yeah,
but
other than just to live eternally, I guess.
Yeah. And I guess in that regard, she is kind of a hypocrite, because one could argue that she did that to make sure everything was in control and to, you know, keep everything in order. But she's arguing with, or not arguing with, but she's making that same argument with Steven. It's like you always have to be in control. Like, when are you going to learn that it's not about you?
Right.
So in that regard, I could see her being a hypocrite. But yeah, like I said, that twist didn't bother me at all. I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, no, I liked it too. And I didn't mind the Mandarin twist, but that's because I didn't know much about the Mandarin, you know?
Uh-huh.
So that one didn't bother me. I liked Ben Kingsley's performance in that. But yes, now that you mentioned it, yeah, that would make a lot more sense. Like, if they had treated Ra's al Ghul as the same way, it would have bothered me.
Yeah.
So I can totally understand that.
Yeah, for sure.
One character who I thought felt different in this movie than the way is Wong, played by Benedict Wong.
Yes.
He's so much more serious in this movie, up until the end, I guess. But he is a no nonsense. I do not joke around. I don't even understand your jokes or like your jokes. It was very different than how he's been portrayed lately, which is very comedic. Yeah.
I know people are going to disagree with me, but I prefer this Wong over the comedic Wong.
Yeah. I mean, Wong is he's become kind of this lovable character.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think this Wong, it works better with Doctor Strange, I think, because Doctor Strange is kind of that sarcastic, you know, has that sarcastic kind of attitude. And Wong is just not taking any of it. You know what I mean? He's like, and I think it works really well. So.
Yeah. Well, now that we kind of brought up Doctor Strange himself, I love his arc in this movie. Watching it this time, I knew this already, but it kind of further solidified it with this rewatch. He is so very much an a-hole.
Oh yes.
At the beginning of this movie, and I don't mean like a Tony Stark type of a-hole, because Tony Stark is selfish, but he really doesn't mean any harm.
Right.
He's just looking out for himself, which is understandable. Stephen Strange is borderline malicious at the beginning of this movie. Like, he deliberately embarrasses his colleague. Then he goes out of his way to dog his ex-girlfriend and colleague Christine. So it's like, and she's just, and all she's trying to do is offer him help, and he doesn't want the kind of help
Right.
that she's offering, and he is so mean to her.
Mm-hmm.
He later rectifies that by giving her a heartfelt apology while he's on the operating table. And I love that scene because she's like, you're delusional. she's not like, he's not the type of person to apologize. But
Right.
yeah, I love his arc in this movie, and it's kind of because I see some of myself in him. I see some of my flaws
Right.
in him. He's very sarcastic. He can definitely be quite snarky. And I can definitely be that way. I'm trying to, rectify that. Yeah, but uh I just really love how they handle his arc, and really establish that, he always needs to be in control.
Mm-hmm.
And this, like, for him, his biggest thing to overcome is to relinquish that control and loosen up and just free himself of always wanting perfection.
Yeah. Yeah, and what I was going to say was I love too that it's he's this snarky jerk in the beginning of the movie, and once he starts learning magic, he's not immediately like, "Oh, I see the error of my ways." He's still kind of a snarky jerk even when he starts learning magic. He thinks he's above like the rules of Camertage.
Yeah.
And then when he finds out that Caecilius is trying to bring Earth into this dark dimension and have Dormammu, whatever. He's like, I did not sign up for this. He's like, I just came here to heal my hands. I'm not I'm not fighting creatures from a dark dimension. And so it takes, he has to kind of really get thrown into it really before he starts to actually kind of learn his, the responsibility that he's been given and everything. And so I like his arc in this movie a lot. I don't, I think it wouldn't have felt nearly as real if he had been the way that if he had instantly been like become this spiritually enlightened character as soon as he starts learning magic. And I like that, and it does create for a little bit of comedy too when he's breaking the rules at Camertage and Wong, is upset with him and things like that. So yeah, I think his arc is really, really well done in this movie.
Yeah, and I love that aspect about him. He's constantly breaking the rules, even in subsequent movies. He's constantly breaking the rules.
Still breaking the
rules. That's just who he is. But it's from a different place. He doesn't necessarily think that he's above anyone else. He just, it's still hard for him to relinquish control. Which he does kind of he does kind of do that in this movie. Even though going forward in other movies it's still hard for him to relinquish control. What really makes him come to the realization that he has to get over himself is the death of the Ancient One. And that's when she tells him, it's not about you. Like, you came to Camertage to, repair your hands, but there are bigger problems in the world than your hands. Like, when you came here to this place, you accepted a responsibility to be a protector, and now you have to answer that call. And when he finally does that, in the third act, he's willing to die 1,000 deaths just to keep Dormammu in that that time loop prison, which
Right.
I thought was written very well.
I did too. Yeah, I loved it. And
Yeah.
I don't know who voices Dormammu, but
Benedict Cumberbatch.
oh, is it really? Is Benedict
Yeah.
Cumberbatch doing Dormammu? That's cool. I didn't know
Yeah.
that. I just liked how, Dormammu, I've come here to bargain. He's like, you've come here to wait. What is he's like he like goes
What
into the
is
lines
this
and then he's like, hold on.
illusion?
Yeah. I did like that. That scene is really good with Dorm. Actually, that whole third act fight scene with Caecilius and where he uses the Eye of Agamotto or whatever it's called to stop time and then reverse time, and right as Caecilius is about to stab him, I think was pretty really
Yeah.
really well done.
Yeah, yeah. One of the best things in this movie is the CGI.
Yeah,
It looks fantastic throughout 90% of the
most
movie.
of it. Yeah,
The only thing that looks a little bit off is the cloak of levitation.
yeah.
That whenever that shows up, it looks a bit cartoony. But
it reminds me of the rug from Aladdin.
Aladdin. Yeah. Same thing I thought. But yeah, whenever they in the mirror dimension, or when they are projecting their astral form, like it all looks fantastic, and I love how they translated Jack Kirby's art to live action. It looks beautiful. It is perfectly translated to the big screen.
Nice. I forget. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the astral projection stuff, because that fight scene in the hospital I thought was so good. It looks so amazing, and I love how they
ripped straight from the comics too.
Really, was it?
There's a battle where Doctor Strange is having and is fighting in the astral plane over his own body, and I believe it's in a hospital.
Nice. Yeah, it was really, and I like how like Scott Derrickson chose to, when it goes to the astral projection, kind of made it a little darker. So when you cut back and forth between like Christine's point of view versus the astral projection, like there was a visual change, which I thought really worked very, very well. Yeah. And I thought that fight scene, I love that fight scene. I also really like when Caecilius is chasing Strange and Mordo and they go into the mirror dimension, and it's just the very Inception-esque, the buildings are folding in on each other and everything. Yeah.
That's what really sold people on the movie. Like before it came out, they were calling it's like Matrix and Inception, but a Marvel movie. I was like, sign me up. I need to see that.
Yeah. And I mean, you can't help but think of Inception. And I realize that Doctor Strange has been around a lot longer than the movie Inception, but the movie Inception came out before the movie Doctor Strange. So seeing those buildings kind of do that type of stuff does remind me of Inception, but it looks really, really good in this movie.
Yeah, it's they're battling in basically a kaleidoscope, which is it's awesome.
Dizzying. Yeah. I do like how the cloak is kind of introduced. I like how Strange kind of gets transported to the Sanctum Sanctorum in New York. He doesn't really know where he is, and he's looking through the artifacts, and the cloak is there. And then once the fight breaks out, he's getting thrown into all these artifacts, breaking him left and right. And he even grabs one that actually makes Caecilius pause, and then he's like, you don't know how to use that, do you? I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. That definitely made me laugh. I forgot what I was getting ready to say.
Sorry.
It's okay. Oh, Mordo. I really like Mordo in this movie, and it grinds my gears that he is wasted in the next movie.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes me so mad. Because I was
and it's not even our Mordo that's in the next movie,
No, it's a different Mordo.
Yeah, I'm hoping if they do make a third Doctor Strange, I hope he's the villain in the third one. Because I was going to say, I really like his arc too. The loyal, follower of the Ancient One who realizes that he's been lied to, who then is like, what else, what else is, or, just basically does a 180 on his
Yeah.
belief system and decides to, that's like one of the best post-credit scenes is when he kills that guy and he's like, too many sorcerers.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But that's the thing. I don't think that he does a 180. I think he double downs on his beliefs because Doctor Strange is constantly breaking the rules.
Right.
And Mortal is not that person. He is upholding order because of we don't really know what his past was. They only touch on it for a brief second, saying he wanted to get revenge on his enemies, but he wound up facing his demons, which was great. But he has such a black and white sense of right and wrong that he is willing to kill in order to uphold what is right. And I think that his dissent is very well represented through the writing. And
Yeah.
Chiwetel Ejiofor does an amazing job portraying that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope we do get to see more of it in the next movie, because you're right. It was cool seeing him in Multiverse of Madness, but it was it was a waste.
Completely different person.
Yeah. How do you feel about Mads Mikkelsen as Caecilius?
Wasted. Caecilius could have been a great villain, but his motivations were not explored as much as I would have liked them to have been. But that being said, Marvel has a villain issue. They always have.
Right.
Out of 30, 31 movies now, something like that.
I think, yeah.
There's maybe 7 to 10 good ones.
Right.
Out of those 7, there are maybe 4 that are really good.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's that's one of the flaws of the movie. But like I said, that's also one of the flaws of the MCU. So it doesn't. I by this point, the MCU has been around for 8 years. I'm used to the villains being not great.
Right. I don't
even
think
Dormammu, I felt like he could have been much more of a presence. They don't even mention his name until the middle of the movie, which is fine. But
right.
The intent was to have him feel like a looming presence, and it doesn't feel like that.
No, you see like a flash of him twice, I think, in kind of the earlier parts of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I think like there's one scene where Steven wakes up, and like right before he wakes up, there's like a flash of Dormammu, and then there's another scene, I forget what it is, but there's another flash. But you're right, it doesn't feel like a looming presence or anything. It's especially first time viewing, you're going, what was that? I saw like a purple, was that Thanos? It's like, right. And so yeah, I agree. It doesn't quite have the looming presence. I like Caecilius. I do agree that he probably could have had a stronger motivation, or at least that motivation could have been expressed a little bit better in the movie. I think Mads Mikkelsen was a great choice. I think he's a strong actor, and having a strong actor play the role helps. He's also, he has a great look. I love the kind of the look of the eyes. The farther they get, kind of pulling power from the dark dimension starts to corrupt their face.
Mm-hmm.
You would think people in Caecilius's gang would be like, is this normal? Maybe we should stop.
Hey, my eyes feel funny. Like, why?
Your eyes
look
really weird. But I thought it was a great look. Production design wise, I thought it looked really great. And like I said, I love the scene with Dormammu, but yeah, I wish maybe Dormammu had been more of a looming presence, more of an ongoing threat that builds up to the final act on his arrival or something. I don't know how you would do it exactly, but
For sure. And that kind of plays into my next point, which is the movie. I people rarely say this about movies, but I feel like the movie could have been a little bit longer. Because it's just under 2 hours, but I feel like I would have loved to have seen more with Doctor Strange before his accident, seeing a little bit more of his negative aspects.
Yeah, he gets into the accident really fast.
Yeah, really, really quickly, like 10 minutes into the movie, he's in the accident. And I feel like that could have been fleshed out more. I would have loved to have seen a little bit more of his relationship with Christine, working in the hospital, interacting with other doctors, just to kind of flesh out his development a little bit more. Also, again, with Caecilius, show a little bit more of his backstory. Just to show a little bit more of what happened before that opening scene in the movie,
where he comes and steals the
So I feel like the movie could have benefited from being 10 to 15 minutes longer, which would have put it at like 2 hours and 10 minutes.
Yeah, which would have been perfectly normal for a Marvel movie. There are some deleted scenes on the Blu-ray that I have not watched, so I don't know what they are or if they are. Either. Maybe they're. I was gonna say maybe they're kind of the scenes you're looking for, but who knows? They might be inconsequential too. Who knows?
And I love the look of this movie too. I don't know who the DP was, but this is one of the cleaner looking Marvel movies. Marvel movies, especially in phase 1 and phase 2, tend to have like a kind of gray haze over them. This movie does not have that at all. It feels very clean, like really clean.
Yeah. I think it's really the print, the font is so small, but I think the director of photography is Ben Davis, who I'm unfamiliar with. But
let's go to IMDb. Yeah, Ben Davis. What else has he done? Dumbo. Oh, the Banshees of Inisherin.
Oh, nice.
Captain Marvel. That makes sense because despite my feelings about Captain Marvel as a whole, it is a pretty good looking movie.
Nice.
Guardians of the Galaxy, another this makes perfect sense. He's done all the best looking Marvel movies.
Nice. He's a name I guess I'll have to remember.
Yeah. And he really he has the eye.
Yeah, for sure. I'm watching the movie on my TV as we talk, and I'm at the scene where he is in the hospital. Christine is about to operate, and his astral body just showed up, and she's like freaking out because, of course, you would, essentially seeing like his ghost.
I'm about 3 minutes behind you. They're still fighting at in the
Sanctum Sanctorum.
The Sanctum Sanctorum in New York. Yeah, I was really enjoying myself watching this movie this last time. Yeah. But again, it's very surprising that I find myself defending this movie. I'm like what? Like, did we clearly watch 2 different movies?
Right. I think the problem is, there are 30 Marvel movies, and so new ones keep coming out, and we really like them, or for the most part, like, Spider-Man No Way Home, Wakanda Forever. And so you kind of, you don't watch the older ones for a while. So you don't remember really how good they are. And so if you start to have to if you're ranking them, you're like, well, Doctor Strange, you just kind of keeps getting pushed down to the point where then you suddenly get this idea that it's not that great of a movie. But then if you go back and watch it, you're like, no, it's awesome. And so at least that's my theory, but I don't know if that's true.
I also think that it's because of Doctor Strange, like as a character himself. most people know Doctor Strange from the Avengers and not Doctor Strange, the comic book, where
Right.
Spider-Man is the other way around. Most people know Spider-Man from just being Spider-Man. They don't know
Right.
him as an Avenger. And a lot of people would argue that Doctor Strange works better as a supporting character, which I can agree with to an extent. And the reason I say to an extent is because of this movie. He is
Right.
very good in this movie. Whereas in Multiverse of Madness, he's kind of outshined by everyone around
Right.
him. I think the best version of Doctor Strange is probably Infinity War.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's the Doctor Strange that we know and love, and is now operating in a role or in a position that we are used to seeing him in, where
Right.
he doesn't have the burden of carrying the movie. He can just be Doctor Strange without having to necessarily propel the plot forward, which I think
Right.
is best for Doctor Strange. But in this particular movie, I very, very much believe that they did him justice.
I agree for sure. And I think you're right. I think the best maybe this movie aside, the best version of Doctor Strange is Infinity War. I've been actually kind of rewatching that movie when I have 5 minutes. I'll just kind of watch the movie in pieces, and he is really good in that movie. And he does, he is the Sorcerer Supreme in that film, and he's got, like that scene where he looks at the 5 million different futures or whatever, and they only win the one outcome type thing. That's a very Doctor Strange, I feel like, thing to do. And it works so well in the movie. And he plays really well opposite Robert Downey Jr. too, I think. So
absolutely.
He's really good in that movie.
It's weird seeing them together because one could argue that they're the same type of character, but when they're on screen, Doctor Strange is the straight man.
Right. That's true.
Yeah. So like seeing them play off of each other and kind of shift a little bit, like Doctor Strange goes a little bit down here and Tony Stark is elevated a little bit up, like as far as their personalities. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Doctor Strange's theme is one of the best in the MCU. I absolutely love it. Yeah. That music is so Doctor Strange. It fits him so well. I love the use of the like I think it's a harpsichord.
Mm-hmm.
And just different like otherworldly type instruments from different parts of the world. It makes the movie. It gives a movie a certain kind of personality that is unique and not. It's not. Other Marvel movies don't sound like this movie,
right?
And that was a deliberate choice.
Yeah.
Which I thought was great. I loved it. Because I made a playlist on Tidal of all the themes from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This is one that I play on repeat.
Nice. And of course, it's done by the great Michael Giacchino. And I remember when he's either right when the movie was coming out or when he was announced that he was scoring the movie. But he talked about how he was a big Doctor Strange fan. And he actually, I think, fought to get this movie. I mean, I don't know how hard he fought. If it was, if
Scott, to fight too hard.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if Scott Derrickson was smart, Michael Giacchino was like, "I want to do it," and he was like, "It's all yours.
Here you go."
And so I think you could kind of feel that in the music, the love for the character and because you're right, there's not a lot of Marvel movies that sound like this, and Michael Giacchino just knocked it out of the park with his theme. And the music in the rest of the movie too. I mean, it's really, really stands out in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. And it just plays into the whole aesthetic of the film. Like the music really sounds strange. And
Mm-hmm.
the Doctor Strange is he's a fish out of water in this movie. This is definitely a fish out of water um type movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that weird music just plays right into that. And now that I say it, like the guitar or the harpsichord, whatever that thing is, it kind of sounds like it's underwater a little bit.
Right, right, yeah. Well, Stu, I think we could go ahead and go into ratings, and I always make you start, so I guess I'll start this time.
Okay.
Um, I don't know what I have rated this on Letterboxd, if I have rated it already, which I'm sure I have. But now that you and I talking about it and rewatching it and just remembering how good it is, I'm torn between giving it. I'm torn between 4 and 4.5. But I think I'm going to lean towards 4. I think I'm going to go with 4. Eye of Agamottos or whatever it is. I can't remember. I should maybe learn what the actual name of that thing is
No,
before.
that's what it is.
Okay.
I gotta agree. I'm with you when you're right. Um, I had it rated at a 4 on Letterbox, and um, I'm gonna keep that the same. I'm
Yeah.
gonna give it 4 out of 5 uh cloaks of levitation. Um, but it's a strong 4. It's a very
It is
strong
very
4.
strong 4. Yeah.
Uh, I I genuinely love this movie, and it makes me sad when other people don't.
Right. Well, yeah, and I just think it's, that's my go-to response, I think, from now on. Not that I really like comment a lot when I see somebody bash a movie, but if I see somebody talking about this movie, I think my comment will be, you need to watch it again. Because
Yeah.
it's better than you remember.
And you know what? I think that and this goes for a few movies in the MCU. Whenever an MCU movie does something different, people don't necessarily like it. And the
Right.
thing that this movie does different is it grounds mysticism. And a lot of the a lot now I'll say a lot of the MCU movies, but the ones that I hold in high regard, outside of the Avengers movies, because everybody loves those.
Sure.
Um, so like Doctor Strange is is essentially a fantasy drama with a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of comedy sprinkled in there, because the MCU has a lot of comedy in it.
Yes.
Um, some no, there are one or two movies that are heavier than others. Ant Man and Guardians of the Galaxy are probably the two, like, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum as far as like being like super uber funny.
Right, right, right.
Um, but this is not that movie. It's much closer to the other end of the spectrum. Um, and it's more of the kind of movie that I like. Um, Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier is another one that people go back and forth about. I firmly believe that it is not only one of the best movies in the MCU, but it's really one of the best superhero movies ever.
Yeah. No, it really is.
Because it's grounded. It's a political thriller that just happens to have Captain America as the main character.
Right.
Um, but again, people go back and forth about it. So I feel like the anti-Marvel movies are the ones that people say aren't that good. Eternals, a very as anti-Marvel as you can get,
Mm-hmm.
because it's this big grand movie that's so introspective, and people don't like that. They want jokes, they want spectacle. They want to go to the movies to have a good time, which I
Right.
understand, but I want to go to the what makes me have a good time when I go to the movies. I want to be challenged, whether that's mentally or emotionally or whatever. I want to come out of the movie thinking a little bit differently, and these types of movies do that for me.
Nice. I think that's a good way to end it. Well, we'd love to know what you think about Doctor Strange. You can always let us know at cinemaheroes.com. You can also tweet at us or leave a comment on our Instagram. Both handles are at cinemaheroes. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can always leave a comment down below. Please do. And if you do like the video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Tell your friends about us. Give us a rating on Apple Podcasts. That always helps us spread the word. But I think that about wraps it up for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm Jay Stu.
As always, thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.